Evolutionary psychology takes all of this a little bit further. It's trying to understand human nature based on how we might have been programmed based on our ancestral history. Evolutionary psychologists focus on what makes us so much alike as humans. One of the areas they really look in is Darwin's idea of natural selection. And this basically has 4 components. It first says that an organism's varied offspring compete for survival. Certain biological and behavioral variations increase an organism's reproductive and survival chances in their particular environment. Offspring that survive are more likely to pass their genes to ensuing generations. Thus, over time, population characteristics may change. When certain traits are selected by conferring a reproductive advantage to an individual or a species, those traits over time will prevail. And you see this in dog breeders. So dog breeders that are looking for certain traits will continue to breed those dogs together that share those traits until those traits are something that are common. Those mutations become common. Our adaptive flexibility in responding to different environments contributes to our fitness. Our fitness in this area is our ability to survive and reproduce. So evolutionary psychologists look at all of these things. Evolutionary success helps explain similarities. Behavior that contribute to survival are found throughout cultures, and our behavioral and biological similarities arise from our shared human genome. No more than 5% of the genetic differences among humans arise from population group differences. So 95% of us is the same among different cultures. We are, however, predisposed to genetically behave in ways that promoted our ancestors surviving and reproducing. However, some of these traits that helped our ancestors survive and reproduce are outdated for us in a modern world. An example of this would be that we crave sweets and fat to help us take in those high-calorie foods, which then would give us a layer of fat and fat storage during times of famine. That was important back in times when food sources were unpredictable, but now, of course, they lead to obesity, and a lot of us really wish we didn't crave chocolate. The second Darwin revolution is occurring right now, and this is kind of interesting, and this is the application of evolutionary principles to psychology. Why do infants start to fear strangers about the time they become mobile? That's an idea that they might look at. So this is like, how do we take these ideas of natural selection and apply it to behavior and how it affects our behavior? There are also some gender differences that we need to look at. And evolutionary psychologists look at gender differences in terms of sexuality. There's been a lot of studies on how men and women view sex, and we know that men have a stronger tendency towards sex. For example, your book talks about men have a lower threshold for perceiving warm responses from women as a sexual come-on. So a woman who smiles and is friendly, a man will much more quickly than another woman looking at the same type of behavior assume that is a come-on for sex. Some other things that are interesting that evolutionary psychologists have discovered is that we have different preferences in partners in men and women. Males tend to prefer healthy, fertile-appearing women who stand a better chance of sending their genes into the future. Men are most attracted to women in ages of peak fertility, so this would explain why teenage boys are attracted to women in their 20s, while men in their 20s are attracted to women in their 20s, and why older men are attracted to younger women. They have done a lot of studies to show that men are attracted to women that are in their peak childbearing years. Women, on the other hand, are attracted to mature, dominant, bold, and affluent men that have long-term mating and investment in their joint offspring potential. The capacity to support and protect, that is the type of people that women tend to be attracted to. So the male and female approaches to sex are very different. Female are more relational in their approach, and males are more recreational. In our ancestral history, the saying the book had I thought was cute, females pair wisely, but men pair widely. So men are spreading their genetics code as to as many partners as possible, hoping to ensure that some of it makes it to the future. And females are looking to pair with males that will stay there and help them support their children so they'll make it into the future. It's two different approaches to survival. Evolutionary psychologists believe that nature selects behaviors that increase the likelihood of sending one's genes into the future. There are some critiques of this perspective. First of all, the idea that this is backward theorizing, that we're looking at how people act now and we're going back and rationalizing it. We start with an effect and work backward to find an explanation. That's one critique of this perspective. The other one is that social expectations also shape gender differences in mate preferences. So we in this Western culture value very attractive women. So that might be influencing how males look and select females, rather than it's some kind of ancestral history and genetic pull. This causes us to reflect a lot on nature versus nurture, and one of the things we can talk about is a few things to sum it all up, is that first of all, differences initiated by our nature might be amplified by our nurture. Gender roles shape us, there's no doubt. Genes are all pervasive but not all powerful. People may defy their genetic pull to reproduce. You have women that have decided not to have children and vice versa. So you can override some of your genetic programming. As a culture, we may defy and do the opposite of what is expected. Some women choose not to have children. Again, that's different. There's a controversy right now also between science and religion over evolution, although the Catholic Church does not share in this controversy. But there are many faiths that do, that have a hard time with the idea of evolution. And there's also very interesting, Roger Sperry came up with the view that the mind and brain is a holistic system. The brain creates and controls the emergent mind, which in turn influences the brain. So if you think about pizza, you start to salivate. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of a chicken and egg. Is the brain creating the mind or the mind creating the brain? But basically what you need to know is that it's a holistic relationship, that they work together. This concludes the area on evolutionary psychology and the effects of genetics on behavior. The next area we'll be looking at, after the nerves and the endocrine system, of course, the final area is the brain. But these are all important things that we need to discuss in determining what influences our behavior.